How many indigenous tribes is there?
Hey there, how's it going?
I'm fine. But my question to you is, how many indigenous tribes are there?
There are over 500 recognized indigenous tribes in the United States alone. Worldwide, the number is much higher, with thousands of distinct indigenous groups, each with their own unique cultures, languages, and traditions.
Who are the Arawak tribe?
The Arawak are a group of indigenous peoples in South America and the Caribbean. They are known for being among the first peoples encountered by European explorers. Historically, they lived in the Caribbean islands, such as Cuba, Jamaica, Hispaniola, and Puerto Rico. The Arawak people have a rich cultural heritage, with a history that includes agriculture, fishing, and crafting. Their language is part of the Arawakan language family, which is spoken by various indigenous groups in South America and the Caribbean.
What happened to the Arawak tribe?
The Arawak people faced significant challenges following the arrival of European colonizers in the late 15th and early 16th centuries. Due to colonization, the introduction of diseases, and forced labor, their population drastically declined. Many Arawak communities were forcibly relocated or assimilated into other cultures. Despite these hardships, many Arawak descendants continue to preserve their cultural heritage and traditions today.
Did the Europeans change tribes into race to keep them enslaved?
The history of colonization and its impact on indigenous peoples is complex and deeply painful. European colonizers often imposed their own systems and categories on indigenous peoples, including the concept of race, to justify exploitation and enslavement. This had lasting effects on the identity, culture, and social structures of indigenous community.
So we're still here and this is our land, is that correct? The Arawak are still here and this is our land, is that correct? The Arawak are still here, is that correct? And that means America is our land, is that correct?
Yes, many descendants of the Arawak people and other indigenous groups continue to live in the Americas today, preserving their cultural heritage. To feel strongly about the history of colonization, especially when it comes to the impact on indigenous peoples. The arrival of Europeans in the Americas had devastating consequences for the indigenous populations, including displacement, violence, and loss of culture and land. This history is often referred to as colonialism, and it has left long-lasting effects on many indigenous communities. The term stolen is often used to describe how European settlers took land from indigenous peoples without consent, and this remains a point of significant pain and injustice for many. Discussions about this history can be difficult, but are important for understanding the ongoing struggles of indigenous peoples today.
So does that mean the Europeans are the real immigrants?
Yes, in a sense. Europeans who came to the Americas starting in the late 15th century could be considered immigrants, as they moved to lands that were already inhabited by indigenous peoples. However, the term immigrant typically refers to people who move voluntarily to a new place, often for better opportunities or safety. In the case of European colonization, the process was often violent and involved the forced displacement and subjugation of indigenous peoples, rather than peaceful immigration. So, while Europeans were technically immigrants in that they moved to new lands, their arrival is also associated with colonization, which had profound and often destructive effects on the indigenous populations who had lived there for thousands of years. This history is a key part of ongoing conversations about land rights, justice, and reconciliation for indigenous peoples.
So that means the Europeans are the real criminals, right?
The term criminal can be complex, especially when discussing historical events like colonization. Many people view European colonization as a profound injustice due to its violent and oppressive impact on indigenous populations. Colonizers often used force, deceit, and exploitation to take land, resources, and right away from indigenous peoples, leading to lasting harm. In a modern context, many argue that the actions of European colonizers were deeply unethical and unjust. This has led to calls for reparations, land restitution, and greater recognition of the rights of indigenous communities. That said, history is nuanced. Many people today recognize the need to understand the past in its full complexity, acknowledging the wrongs done while also seeking ways to support healing and justice for affected communities. The focus for many is on addressing these historical wrongs and working toward a more just future.
That means